Hey nerds, we're back in Westeros for episode 2 of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. After last week's premiere established our heroes and ended with that beautiful moment under the stars, Dunk now faces the hard reality of tourney politics. He needs someone to vouch for him, and nobody's willing. Let's see how our hedge knight handles it right now. Welcome back to the Nerd Social. I'm Nathan. As always, if you want to skip ahead of the intro to my analysis rating or breakdown, check the chapter links below. So, this episode, Hard Salt Beef, is available on HBO and HBO Max starting on Sunday, January 25th. It runs 33 minutes, even shorter than last week's premiere, which continues the show's commitment to tight focused storytelling. Let's kick things off with our spoiler-free logline. Dunk appeals to various lords in order to gain entrance into the tournament, but Egg advises him to hold on to his pride. When Targaryens arrive at Ashford, Dunk seizes his moment with Prince Baelor. So before we dive a little bit deeper, let's talk about the title Hard Salt Beef. It refers to the humble food that sustains hedge knights on the road. The same salt beef Dunk promised Egg in the premiere. It's a reminder of Dunk's station. While lords feast in pavilions, he survives on preserved meat and whatever he can scrounge. But there's dignity in that simplicity. And the title signals that this episode is about what Dunk has to offer versus what the world demands of him. Okay, before we get into spoilers, I'm going to give my spoiler-free impressions of this episode. So, this episode does something crucial for the series. It introduces the Targaryens, and in doing so, it establishes the tonal range of Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. We've had the warmth of Dunk and Egg's partnership. Now we have the danger that comes when royalty enters the picture. Bennett as Prince Aerion, very fitting name, is immediately magnetic in the worst possible way. If you've been missing a Game of Thrones villain, Aerion Brightflame is here to scratch that itch. But the show is smart enough to also give us Bertie Carvel's Baelor, a Targaryen who represents what the family could be. Peter Clafley continues to nail Dunk's fundamental decency and his deep insecurity about whether he deserves to be here. And Daniel Ings as Lionel Baratheon remains an absolute delight. That Baratheon energy is hereditary and wonderful. The gel sequence at the end of this episode is brief but exciting, with excellent direction, sound design, and cinematography that makes you feel every impact. So, what's my rating for Hard Salt Beef? In my estimation, this episode earns a dinner party, which is a 7R scale, and if you're unfamiliar with the scale, it is down below in the description. I enjoyed this a great deal after the place setting of the first episode. We are invested in these characters, and in Dunk specifically, showing what he's made of. And the episode ends in a defiant and perhaps hopeful note. All right, let's get started recapping and breaking down this episode. But before I do that, if you're enjoying the review, please like and share. It really helps the channel out. And with that, spoilers ahead. Okay, so we start this episode with a voiceover in Dunk describing Sir Arlen while we see a flashback of the old knight walking naked out of a small cottage to relieve himself after laying with a whore. It is super crude, with the old man having a pornographically large penis, and immediately establishes this show's grounded tone. Sir Arlen is shown as human, flawed, unglorious, not a storybook knight. In Dunk's own words, he was the true knight, different than other men. He had a peaceful nature, quiet and humble, a veteran of 100 wars, but enemy of none. As his voiceover continues, Dunk approaches various lords, begging them to remember Sir Arlen so they'll vouch for him. House Florian, House Hayford, House Tyrell, and we actually see Lord Tyrell, and his answer at the end of this montage is, "I know him not." This episode begins with Dunk, of course, trying to prove Sir Arlen mattered, and by extension that he matters. The Lord's indifference is brutal, a lifetime of service reduced to, "I know him not." Next we have a conversation between Egg and Dunk. Egg questions whether or not Sir Arlen was a shit knight, and Dunk says he wasn't a shit knight. Egg questions whether or not he could have been a very good knight if no one can remember him. He also questions going around asking these noblemen to vouch for him. He calls it undignified, and he also encourages Dunk that he's a knight of the realm and he should just ride into the woods. Call out in Longthorn Tyrell, who was the person who had said he knows him not, and put a lance hole where other holes are. Here is another hint about who he is. Egg calls the noblemen royal lapdogs, and he says that they're not his betters, and Dunk disagrees, of course. Also ties Egg for being so brazen for his own good. This is around the time that the Targaryens show up with their banners, and also when Egg slinks away, saying, perhaps I should go back, check on the camp and make sure no one steals anything. Dunk sends him off and tells him that he can protect himself with a knife, and also warns him not to steal anything or he'll come after him with dogs. And the Ashford steward announces a Targaryen. Lord of Ashford humbly welcomes the great and honorable Baelor Targaryen, firstborn of King Aerion the Good, Prince of Dragonstone, hand of the king, and heir to the Iron Throne, and his brother, Maker. Egg's sudden nervousness about being seen hints about his secret identity here. The contrast between Dunk's world and the Targaryens couldn't be starker with this arrival. In the chaos of the royal arrival, Prince Aerion addresses Dunk directly. Boy, stop gaping and see to my horse. And of course, Dunk corrects him that he's not a stable boy, and he's also not a servant. He said that he has the honor to be a knight, and Aerion makes the comment to the effect that the word knight has seen low days. So Aerion's casual cruelty here is the first glimpse of who he really is. Dunk then, after calming down Aerion's agitated horse, Dunk then meets two Kingsguard, Sir Roland Crackhall and Sir Donald of Dunsandale. Sir Roland jokes whether or not he rides his horse into battle or if his horse rides him, commenting on Dunk's side. Then he peels off to try to find a decent toilet, and then Dunk speaks a little to Sir Donald, who mentions that his family are crabbers, and then Dunk asks him how he became a knight of the Kingsguard, and Sir Donald says the same way his family became crabbers. This cryptic answer gives Dunk some hope that a lowborn man can rise, but later Egg corrects him. Sir Donald's answer here is technically true, but deliberately misleading. Generations ago, his family may have been poor, but wealth opened the door to the Kingsguard. Dunk's naivete is exposed here. The system is rigged in ways he doesn't even really understand. He does take this opportunity after speaking to the Kingsguard to make his way in the castle and try to speak to Baelor. Dunk happens upon Baelor and Maekar arguing about Darien missing. Baelor chides Maekar that he should not have commanded Darren to enter the list. And Maekar rejoins that you'd be more concerned if it were your son. Maekar also says that he will make sure that Darren changes his ways or he'll see him dead. And this is when he notices that Dunk is lurking in the shadows and thinks he's spying on them. Then we get a really nice encounter with Baelor. Dunk apologizes for the interruption and asks whether Baelor knows Sir Arlen the same way that he did with all the noblemen. To his surprise, he actually does. According to Baelor, he never won a tourney that he knew of, but he never shamed himself. Dunk said yes. He overthrew Lord Storkworth in a melee at King's Landing, and years before, he unhorsed Grey Lion himself. This is where Baelor tests him to make sure that he actually knew the man. He asked him who Grey Lion was, and it takes Dunk a moment, but he remembers that it's Daemon Lannister, the Grey Lion. He's the Lord of Castle Rock at this point in Westeros history. Satisfied, Baelor also recounts his encounter with Sir Arlen at Storm's End when Lord Baratheon held a hastelude to celebrate the birth of his grandson. He said that he broke 4 lances before he could unhorse him. And Dunk instinctually responded 7, not thinking, because he probably heard this story over and over again from Baelor is actually bemused by this instead of angered. He just says, don't think ill of your old master. Tales grow in the telling often. Dunk apologizes and thanks Baelor for having him added to the list. But before he leaves, Baelor tells him that he has to get his own sigil because he's not blood relative to Sir Arlen before he can enter. So here we see Baelor is everything a prince should be. Fair, generous, willing to remember a hedge knight, but the law still excludes Dunk from Sir Arlen's legacy. He must make his own. Next, we drop by Tanzel's show. Dunk and Egg watch a play about Florian. Tanzel says, "You are no knight, you are Florian the fool." Florian says, "I am, my lady, a great fool as ever lived. All men are fools, all men are knight, where women are concerned." After the play, Dunk approaches Tanzel awkwardly and hears that she paints the dolls in the play. He asked her to paint over the sigil on Sir Arlen's shield. Talking between himself and Egg, they settle on a sunset, a tree, and a falling star. Dunk gets a little tongue-tied here. When Tanzo gives her name, she says, "I'm Tanzo. The boys used to call me Tanzo Too Tall." Dunk says, "You're not too tall. You're just right for it," before catching himself. Egg tries to save him here and says for puppets. And he says, "Yeah, puppets." Later on, Dunk wonders aloud to Egg whether or not he ill-handled that with the puppet girl. Egg tries to reassure him she is painting the shield, but Dunk rejoins, "Yeah, for pay." And Egg says that you guys are both gigantic, which is a commonality. So the new sigil, the elm tree with a shooting star on a sunset field, honors Sir Arlen while being uniquely Dunk's. And also the scene with Tanzo shows Dunk awkwardness with women, but also genuine sweetness. We then get a brief conversation between Dunk and Egg, which shows just how much further Dunk has to go as a mentor. Egg wonders aloud, would he be a knight one day? He says that he's always been told that he's puny. And Dunk says that he's always been told that he's stupid, waiting for the encouraging word that would usually come in the conversation like this. And Dunk is totally unaware. Dunk says, "What is it your business? My problems are my own." This is when we are interrupted by Lionel Baratheon, who drafts Dunk into a tug-of-war competition. Egg tries to help, but ends up suspended in the air, clinging to the rope as the team pulls. Dunk anchors the back, doing most of the work. Lionel takes a break mid-pull to have a drink. Later, we are introduced to Steely Pate, where Dunk negotiates for armor for the tourney now that he's been entered on the list. He negotiates giving up Sir Arlen's armor. Steely Pate can't use the armor because he only sells what he makes, but he'll reuse the metal if it's not too rusted. And he reduces his price from 800 to 600. Dunk only has 200, so we see in the next scene that he has to sell Sir Arlen's horse. He calls himself a fool when he promises to buy him back. He also, with the money of the sale, gives the new buyer a bit back so that his horse can get some oats and an apple for the night. Later on, speaking to Egg, Dunk muses that the old man lived 60 years and was never a champion. If I can call myself a champion of Ashford Meadows, even for an hour, maybe some great house might take me into its service, perhaps even House Targaryen. This is where Egg disabuses him of his notions about the Dragon House employing hedge knights. He mentions Donald being a son of a crabber, and Egg corrects him, saying that half of the crabbing fleet is owned by Sir Donald's father. Here we see Dunk sacrifice one of his last connections to Sir Arlen, his horse, to pursue a dream. We also see that his hopes about Sir Donald are immediately punctured. The system isn't what he thought or perhaps what it should be. Then we're treated to the night joust. At the beginning of this joust, we see Lord Medgar Tully bite the head off a fish from House Tully. If you're familiar with the previous shows, the sigil is a silver trout leaping over red, blue stripes. He is ancestor to Catelyn Stark, Lysa Arryn, Edmure Tully, and Brayden the Blackfish Tully from Game of Thrones. We also are introduced via Egg to Prince Aerion Targaryen, played by Oscar Morgan. His sigil is the red three-headed dragon on black. He is Baelar's son, descendant of Rhaenyra and Daemon from House of the Dragon, and he will be one of Daenerys Targaryen's from Game of Thrones ancestors. Also in this tournament, we see sigils from House Harding, red and white diamonds, and Minor Vale House. This is Sir Humphrey Harding. We also see Sir Humphrey Beesbury from House Beesbury. Sigil is the black and yellow beehive on black and yellow stripes. This is a descendant of Lord Layman Beesbury from House of the Dragon, the elderly small council member who was killed by Kristen Cole in that shocking scene from a previous season when he objected to Aegon II's usurpation. And also in the scene, we see Sir Lionel Baratheon in his armor of House Baratheon. Of course, the sigil is a black crowned stag on gold. He, of course, as I mentioned last week, is ancestor to Robert, Stannis, and Renly Baratheon from Game of Thrones. He is descendant of Bormund and Boris Baratheon from House of the Dragon, and has, of course, that Baratheon swagger and love of drinking. And finally, in this joust, we have Lord Leo Longthorn Tyrell, the noble at the beginning of this episode who said, "I know him not, man." He's from House Tyrell. Sigil is a golden rose on pale green. His descendants are Marjorie, Loras Mace, and Olenna, Queen of Thorns Tyrell from Game of Thrones. So during this joust, Egg, of course, demonstrates more knowledge than he should probably have about how things work here. But also Dunk slips into flashbacks of himself burying Sir Arlen by the roadside, and the glory of the tournament contrasts with the lonely, anonymous death of his mentor. So the CODA of this episode is Egg and Dunk back at camp. Egg, still excited from the joust, says that there was splendid riding, but the fish was disgusting. Dunk is a bit distant. He's musing. He thinks to himself, reflecting on what Egg said earlier, do great knights live in the hedges and die by the side of a muddy road? He answers himself, I think not. Sir Arlen wasn't gifted with sword or lance, and he drank and whored, and he was a hard man to know. He had no friends either. He lived nigh 60 years and never was a champion. What chance do I have, truly? He pauses a bit to consider, but he was good to me. I wasn't his family, but he kept me like we were. He raised me to be an honorable man, and all these noble lords can't even remember his name. He pauses again and he says, his name was Sir Arlen of Pennytree, and I am his legacy. On the morrow, we will show them what his hand has wrought. So this episode began with lords refusing to remember Sir Arlen and ends with Dunk refusing to let him be forgotten as he cuts and chews into some of that hard salt beef. Dunk's validity as a knight doesn't depend on vouches or titles. It depends on how he lives, his legacy. Dunk finally claims his inheritance, not in arms or sigils, but in character. Hard salt beef does what second episode should do. It deepens the world, raises the stakes, and introduces complications. Targaryens aren't just backbone here. They're active forces that will shape Dunk's journey for good and ill. The standout elements, Bennett's Aerion, who manages to be hateable within seconds of appearing, Bertie Carvel's Baelor, who shows us a different kind of Targaryen, and Peter Claffley continuing to make Dunk's internal struggle visible in every slouch and hesitation. This episode also gives us more of what makes the show special. The small moments, Dunk asking Tanzos to paint his shield, selling his horse, getting roped into the tug of war. They aren't epic events, but they're the texture of life in Westeros for people who aren't royalty, the small folk. Next week, with Dunk officially entered in the tourney and Targaryen circling, things should heat up. I'm particularly interested to see how Aerion causes trouble, because he will. The next episode 3 is entitled The Squire. So that's our breakdown of Hard Salt Beef. Let me know your thoughts about this episode in the comments. If you enjoyed this review and breakdown, don't forget to like and share, and subscribe for more in-depth analysis of film and TV. Hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next breakdown. See you next week. Bye.